House will come to order. Members will be at their seats. The clerk has opened the roll and you may record your presence. Please rise and give your attention to our guest chaplain, Pastor Dean Appel, Assyria Lutheran Church, guest of Representative Stephen Johnson, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Representative Featherston.
The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Dear Lord, you remind us in your word, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. We thank you for the many relationships in which you have set us as legislators, relationships with our own families, with constituents, with all others in our state, country, and world, with each other and with you. Fill our hearts with love for you and for all those whom you call us to serve. Bless our spouses, children, other family members, and friends who must sometimes suffer for the sacrifices of time and energy we spend on state business. Bless our constituents, those who voted for us and those who did not. Remind us that we are here to serve all of them and not our own interests and ideologies. Bless us to be responsible for the needs of our constituents and the needs of others in our state, country, and world. Give us wisdom to make decisions which benefit the common good and not only the narrower interests of our supporters. Bless us to love one another, our fellow legislators here, so that we treat each other with civility and respect and are open to each other's needs, views, and priorities. Finally, and most importantly, bless us with good relationships with you, our Lord, so that we may find wisdom, courage, and guidance from you for all the matters which are before us today and this season. Make our hearts grateful for your willingness to befriend and save us through the death and resurrection of Jesus, in whose name we pray. Amen. Above all, keep loving one another earnestly.
Has every member had the opportunity to record their presence? The clerk will close the roll and record the attendance. Introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill number 2652 by the Committee on Judiciary, an act concerning governmental response to the COVID-19 pandemic in Kansas, extending the authority of the Board of Healing Arts to grant certain temporary emergency licenses, imposing requirements related thereto, and expiring such provisions, extending the suspension of certain requirements related to medical care facilities and expiring such provisions, modifying the COVID-19 Response and Reopening for Business Liability Protection Act, extending immunity from civil liability for certain healthcare providers. House Bill number 2653 by Representative Topliker, an act concerning elections relating to electronic or electromechanical voting systems, optical scanning equipment requiring images of ballots counted by such systems, and equipment to be provided to candidates on request. House Bill number 2654 by the Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure relating to supervision of criminal offenders under supervision of both the Department of Corrections and court services officers, provided guidance for consolidation of supervision into one supervision entity or agency, requiring the Department of Corrections and the Office of Judicial Administration to enter into memorandum of understanding related to the supervision of such offenders. House Bill number 2655 by the Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, an act concerning the Department of Corrections relating to inmates in the custody of the Secretary, requiring secretaries to establish procedures to provide inmates for an opportunity to take a nationally recognized career readiness assessment. House Bill number 2656 by the Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure relating to law enforcement profiling, defining motorcycle profiling, requiring law enforcement agencies to adopt policies prohibiting motorcycle profiling. House Bill number 2657 by the Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure, enacting the Reduced Armed Violence Act, increasing criminal penalties for certain violations of criminal possession of a weapon by a convicted felon that involve firearms. House Bill number 2658 by the Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure relating to sentencing, conditions of probation or suspended sentence, replacing the list of standard conditions of probation and allowing for special conditions to be imposed. House Bill number 2659 by Representatives Lynn and Stockstill, an act concerning schools relating to athletic activities, enacting the Sudden Cardiac Arrest Prevention Act, requiring the State Department of Education and schools to provide information and develop policies to address sudden cardiac arrest in athletic activities. House Bill number 2660 by Representatives Wynn, Alcala, and others, an act concerning the state capitol relating to permanent displays and murals, directing the Capitol Preservation Committee to develop and approve plans for a mural honoring the 1st Kansas Colored Voluntary Infantry Regiment, creating the 1st Kansas Colored Voluntary Infantry Regiment Mural Fund. House Bill number 2661 by Representatives Wynn, Alcala, and others, an act authorizing a permanent memorial commemorating the Kansas suffragist movement to be placed in the state capitol, establishing the Kansas Suffragist Memorial Fund. House Bill number 2662 by the Committee on K-12 Education Budget, an act concerning education relating to schools and school districts, establishing the Parents' Bill of Rights and Academic Transparency Act, affirming certain parental rights relating to education and upbringing of a child, requiring school districts to adopt policies to promote transparency and parental involvement in a child's education, requiring such school district to establish an academic transparency portal on the school district's website to provide information on learning materials and activities in each school. House Bill number 2663 by the Committee on Appropriations, an act concerning nursing facilities relating to reimbursement rates, requiring the Secretary of Age and Disability Services to base such rates upon actual costs. House Bill number 2664 by Representatives Murphy, Blacks, and others, an act concerning unfair business practices, prohibiting banks, trust companies, credit unions, and other business entities from discriminating based on certain subjective or arbitrary standards, establishing civil penalties for violations. House Bill number 2665 by Representatives Woodard, Byers, and others, an act concerning the Kansas Act Against Discrimination, an act supplemental thereto relating to the inclusion of sexual orientation and gender identity or expression as protected classes under the Act. House Bill number 2666 by Representative Byers, Featherston, and others, an act concerning driver's licenses relating to gender designations on driver's licenses, allowing an individual to have a gender designation of X for an individual to change their gender designation on a driver's license, instruction permit, or non-driver identification card. House Bill number 2667 by Representatives Lee and Garber, an act concerning the legislative branch, requiring the state capitol and legislative meetings to be open to the public. House Bill number 2668 by Representatives Lee and Garber, an act concerning freedom of worship, prohibiting certain restrictions on such freedom by governmental entities and public officials, limiting related state of disaster emergency powers of the governor and state of local disaster emergency powers of counties and cities, relating powers of the Secretary of Health and Environment and local health officers. House Bill number 2669 by Representatives Lee and Garber, an act concerning public health relating to vaccination, children and minors, requiring a child care facility or school to grant religious exemptions from vaccination requirements without inquiring into the sincerity of the religious beliefs.
Message from the Senate. The clerk will read.
Announcing the Senate herewith transmits the veto message from the governor together with the enrolled copy of Substitute for Senate Bill 355, an act concerning reapportionment relating to congressional districts, providing for the reapportionment thereof. A motion was made that substitute Senate Bill 355 be passed notwithstanding the governor's veto. By a vote of 27 yeas and 11 nays, the motion having received the required two-thirds constitutional majority of the members elected or appointed to the Senate, voting in the affirmative, the bill passed.
The governor's objection to Senate Bill 355 haven't been read. The time has now arrived for the House to reconsider the said bill. Is there a motion to reconsider? Representative Croft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that notwithstanding the governor's veto of substitute for Senate Bill 355, the bill be passed.
Anybody want to speak to the veto? Seeing done, Representative, you may close. Representative Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I was trying to get back to my seat and didn't get my button on quite quick enough, but that was pretty swift. Well, colleagues, you've heard me up here last handful of days when we talked about the redistricting and why this map is what we consider damaging to Wyandotte County and to the 3rd Congressional District and to the entire mapping process known as redistricting across the state of Kansas. There's not a community that hasn't been impacted by this redistricting discussion in one way or another. I do know that in some of this discussion, there's been some friendships damaged, but what is more important is the damage it's going to do to our trust with the public, the great state of Kansas. Now, I know that there are some that believe that this map is going to be ruled constitutional, and there's those of us that believe that there will be a challenge. And with that challenge comes some of the concerns that I've raised here. And that's as a community that is a majority minority, known as Wyandotte County, you have taken the liberty of dividing those voices. I won't give you the exact number of minorities that have been impacted, but I will share something that was kind of unique that was even brought to my attention. And that's, we had national recognition in Wyandotte County for an event called Taco Trail. You come to Wyandotte County and the plethora of restaurants, if you participated in visiting in each every one, you received a certificate recognition that you'd participated. And it was all in the magazines, on airplanes, and it was a big deal for our community because it brought people to Kansas and to Wyandotte County. So I have to kind of wonder why the 3rd Congressional District is divided right along Taco Trail. I mean, if it was accidental, that's one thing, but I found it kind of unique that after going back to the neighborhoods, talking to neighbors and driving the locations in which we're divided, I can clearly see that it is dividing and diluting minority voices. Now, I've had people and colleagues ask me, well, why is this map so bad? Well, you know, we in Wyandotte County, the state's constitution was discussed, established, and ratified in Wyandotte County. So when I first came here, it was 104 counties in Wyandotte. 104 counties in Wyandotte. And not until I spoke up one day in Fed and State Committee that it's, you know, we're all part of this fabric that makes up this great state of Kansas. We all have a participation to play as a community. I made the comment that about the Constitution and its establishment in Wyandotte County. And I said, so we in Wyandotte County say Wyandotte County and the other 104. So you see, it's that mind think that we have that you want to divide us and separate us and keep us up in arms with one another. Our community, we may have our issues with one another occasionally, but we are united where we stand as a community. Kind of like a family feud. You don't get between two brothers or two sisters that are having an argument because chances are they're going to turn on you. And that is just sage advice. But I will state that when you divide communities of color, you take away a voice. The subliminal message is that your voices don't matter. Your very existence and contribution to the community and to the state process don't matter. Your religious beliefs, your economic empowerment, your social standing, your ability to work with others across the county line do not matter. Because those of us that don't live in your community, that want to take advantage of those minority numbers and those minority voices and move them to a larger population just to say we have minority presence in those congressional districts is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. If a person of color in the 3rd Congressional District from Wyandotte County chose to run for statewide office, very unlikely they would be able to win because the scoreboard's already tallied by diluting those voices. You can do the damage today that you will do. The numbers in Wyandotte County say we belong in the 3rd Congressional District collectively. We have demonstrated for a minimum of 20 years that we can work with the metropolitan area and expand our social economic presence, and we have. Our population's up, housing stock is up. We are no longer the social dumping ground that we were 40 years ago, 30 years ago. When we started down this process, we had rules in place that we would follow and utilize for doing these maps. In every public town hall I attended, even to the southeast within the 2nd Congressional District and the 1st Congressional District, we heard from a majority of the people, not just a simple majority, a large majority of those that gave testimony to keep Wyandotte County and the metropolitan part of Johnson County collectively whole. This was a compressed schedule. It didn't allow for an opportunity for people to see maps that may be proposed, because I guarantee you, had you proposed this map in our community, you would have had hours of discussion. You would have had voices raised that many of you probably have not had an opportunity to engage with in our community. See, we're a proud community. We like our voices to be heard. We're a small delegation. We're a delegation of 7. But at the same time, we represent the most majority of minority voices in this state. I not only find it shameful, I really hope they find it unlawful to silence those voices. We have a chance here today to do the right thing, and that's to sustain this veto, to allow us to have a continued discussion in reference to what is right, what is just, what has clearly demonstrated over the last couple of decades how important it is to keep communities of interest collectively together. I would ask colleagues, there will be a day that your community will be in need. In the years I've stood before this body, The friends that I've made in this chamber has assisted me in knowing your communities. And I'd be one of the first ones to step up to help in any way that I possibly can. We are part of the fabric that makes up this great quilt known as Kansas. But this is wrong. When I think of my colleagues in Douglas County, to pull this very city and put it into another congressional district that is so rural, that is tilted so heavily towards a different political party, again, is shameful. We know the word. We've heard it thrown around. Gerrymander. We've heard that word. Gerrymander is one thing. Political spite is another. And when it starts harming families, the potential for participation in the governmental process, that's a whole different matter. Again, we have a chance to remedy that today. Colleagues, this map was rushed, extremely rushed. I think we did it within the first 10 days of the legislative session. We had 3 or 4 other options that were on the table that were fair and equitable, provided justice and allowed for all voices to be heard, not just those that we want to selectively silence or limit. We can do better. Our constituents deserve to see a fair, equitable, transparent process, not one that's rushed, not one that's gerrymandered, not one that has political bent, one party or another. This is what they've clearly stated from the very beginning. I'm disappointed that we couldn't, as a body, provide that opportunity for the people of Kansas to see better in the works that we as legislature have presented today. I stand ready to continue my due diligence to work on a map that is fair and equitable and just for all of us. I would ask that you commit to doing the same. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. I will vote to sustain the governor's veto.
Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't intend to belabor the point here because you all have already had to listen to me enough this week, but I would like to make this just valid statement here that I think a lot of you feel comfortable voting to override this veto because checks and balances, there's an additional stopgap where this may potentially go to the courts. But about once a year, I always make sure to make it a practice to read the Kansas Constitution. I hope it's a practice in which you all engage. And at current, it is our constitutional mandate as legislators where we draw these maps. This is our job. We don't know the political purview of the justices that might eventually make a decision on this map should it go to the courts. And so we don't know if we'll come out with a map that might end up as a really liberal map. You might be sending this along and taking it out of our own hands. I think that there is still an opportunity for everyone to work together to find a map that is actually more palatable and might fall within the bounds of all of our political ideologies. And so I realize that we overuse the term kicking the can down the road, but a yes vote actually really does do that. I think that we do have the opportunity to work to draw a fair, palatable map that actually does reflect the ideology of our constituents and passes court muster. I urge you to vote no today with the understanding that a no vote is you committing to your constituents that you are willing to do the work instead of kicking it to people over which you have no control. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning. I'm standing before you this morning, obviously, to ask you to sustain the governor's veto. My constituents are concerned and perplexed that Douglas County is being targeted again. 20 years later, when Douglas County was split between District 2 and District 3. Now the city of Lawrence, and only the city of Lawrence, not the rest of our county, has been placed in District 1. I also ask, why split Wyandotte County the way you did? It will weaken our collective vote. We had 6 maps. Why did we only select to vote for 1 at Astra 2? How do we know that we had the best map for our constituents in Kansas? Why this map? My constituents think it is to weaken our collective vote and also for political gain and to increase the population that's declining in District 1. I will vote to sustain the governor's veto because on our 5-day tour around the state of Kansas, our listening tour, we heard repeatedly, create a fair map. We do not consider this a fair map. This makes no logical sense. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it was interesting that during our first debate on this map, it generated some excitement. When other representatives introduced maps that divided up other parts of the state, boy, people were ready. They were ready to come up here and just blast those maps. They did not like them. They denounced those maps. They didn't like that their communities were being divided up. And yet, it seems to be okay. We can divide up Wyandotte County. We can separate other cities from their counties. And to the people of Kansas, many of the people of Kansas, specifically people of color, are saying, why are you targeting me? Why are you trying to divide us up? If you don't think that people of color in other parts of the state aren't taking notice, you are sadly mistaken. Don't make that assumption. People of color are noticing and asking themselves, when are they coming for my community? I ask you to have the political courage to vote against Senate Bill 355. Thank you.
Representative Alcala.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the shoe fits, then be mad. If it doesn't, then I'm not talking to you. Start this off with a little story. About a week ago, I had a representative innocently ask me, what part of Mexico is your parents from? And I said, my parents aren't from Mexico, they're United States-born citizens. And then he apologized, and I said, not only are they United States citizens, all my uncles, and I come from a large family, fought in World War II. I can remember my dad having malaria, PTSD, which was called shell shock at that time when I was a teenager. But my old man always said, he said, I fought for freedom for you kids, the right to have equal rights as everyone else in this country. And he believed that to his dying day. So I would tell you today, I classify this as racial gerrymandering. And if you don't believe it, then you have never circulated around people of color. I think this is awful. I think it deletes the voices of minorities. I don't care if it's in Wyandotte County or if it's in liberal Kansas with a heavy population of Latinos. This is just not right. I will end there. Thank you.
Representative Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm unique to this body in several ways, one in which I'm one of the newest members. And I still have confidence that we can do some things in a bipartisan fashion. And I hope that's not destroyed today. I'm also unique in another way. I've lived in 3 of the congressional districts. I grew up in western Kansas in the 1st District. I lived in northeast Kansas when it was in the 2nd District. I lived in southeast Kansas, and now I live in Wichita. I've been in all these districts. Actually, I've been in 4 districts. When I lived in the 1st District, Lawrence is not the 1st District. We all know that. We all know that's not correct, that's not right. Wyandotte County, I'm not as familiar with, but I listen to my colleagues. Wyandotte County being split the way it is not fair. When I spoke to this the first time, I said we heard the quiet part said out loud, accidentally. And what we see with this map is the quiet part brought to fruition. Now, I'm one who believes that this committee tried their best and they tried to be fair. But I also believe they were handed a map after they had all of the hearings and they were told, pass this map. That's not the way we need to be doing things in this body. Please restore my confidence in bipartisanship and vote to sustain the governor's veto. And let's go back together and put something together that we can agree on. We're all going to have little disagreements here and there, but this is huge. We can come to an agreement without ever having to go to court if we try. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Prost.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, every day that I'm in this building doing this work, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit at a time. I remember when I was a kid and I was studying government, you remember government class, you learn about these people that founded the country and the people that were important in Kansas history. And I remember thinking, I hope I get to do that someday. Didn't have any reason to think I would, some poor kid from Nickerson, but I hoped that I would. Because I thought this is a place where good people come together and use their integrity and their minds to do good work for people to solve problems, and to be fair and mindful in their work. I don't know what brought you all here, and I don't know why you at one point said, I'll do this, and I'll do the hard work of campaigning, and I will put my neck out, and I will open myself up to public scrutiny to do this job. But we're here. And I think when we get here, we tend to forget ourselves, and we tend to forget why we came here, and we forget who we serve. I think a number of you can look inside yourself and know that this map, on its surface, on its face, is not good work. It's not fair. It's only right by one measurement, and that's politics. In every other way, it fails the test of equity. It fails to meet even our own rules. And remember, this is the first map. And some of us are going to wish in this building that we had been a little more particular about following the rules when it comes to our maps. Because we're setting a precedent with this map on how the rest of this is going to be done. When I look at this map, I see a lot of things. But I want everyone to remember, in this case, the ruling party can do whatever it pleases. But you as an individual have dominion over yourself. And you can do as you please as well. And you can do what you think is right. And I think I would ask myself, when I look at this map, what is the cost? You'll gain something politically if you override this veto. But what does it cost? Because when I look at this map, I see apathy. I see disengagement. I see people completely checking out of this process because of things like this. I see people saying politicians are terrible and corrupt, and there are no good people, no good men of integrity, women of integrity in this building. We're all self-serving. That's what I see when I see this map. It is why people have lost faith in our institutions. It's why they've lost faith in what we do. This map flaunts the spirit and the rule of law, and then we ask ourselves why others do it too. If we can't follow our own rules and we can't follow the spirit and intent of the law, why would we expect others to? This map is everything people hate about us, and they're right to do it if we keep doing things like this. We have a limited amount of time, each of us in this building, and no matter how long we're here, it is a blip on the scale of time. But you have the choice and the power to decide in that time if you're going to use it to make your world better or to make it worse. I ask you to consider that as you cast your vote.
Representative Sawyer.
I'm going to keep this short, but I think this is a very sad day for Kansas. You know, when I first saw this map, I really did think it was a joke. I thought there's no way they're serious about taking the city of Lawrence and put it in the 1st District. I didn't think they were serious about dividing our minority communities, dividing the Latino community in half in Wyandotte County, dividing the African American community. I said, no way they're going to be that blatant. That this map was just thrown out there so that when we see the real map that they want, it won't look so bad. Well, I guess since it's passed the Senate and it's passed the House and they've overridden the veto in the Senate, here we are debating the same thing in the House. They are serious about this map. And I think that's very sad for the people of Kansas. I've been through several past redistricting. And in the past, we've generally tried very hard to work together and come up with some kind of consensus map. This is the most politically gerrymandered map I've ever seen. And that's sad for the people of Kansas. You know, when we were debating this on the House floor, there was another map that was presented that put Wichita with Southwest Kansas. And I remember members of the majority party coming up here saying, you can't do that. Wichita doesn't have anything in common with cities like Elkhart and Southwest Kansas. Well, Wichita has a lot more in common with those cities than the city of Lawrence does. Like, you guys were making a really good argument on why this is such a bad map. You know, we have a long history in Kansas, I think, of trying to work together and work things out. And like I said, in the House, we have a particular history on redistricting of always being able to do that. And today I feel like this is sad that like Washington, D.C. politics is coming to Kansas, that we are passing a map that everybody knows isn't right. I don't think anybody with a straight face can say that Lawrence belongs with Western Kansas. I don't think anybody can say with a straight face we need to divide minority communities in half. You know, this map even takes two Native American nations that are in the same county and puts them in separate congressional districts. I think it's very sad. I think we have one last opportunity here to do the right thing. This doesn't have to be a sad day for Kansas. We can vote no today and start over and come together with a much better map, a much fairer map. That's what the citizens of Kansas asked us to do when we did the tour. Nobody said put Lawrence in the first district. Nobody. Nobody said that we should divide the Kansas City area, divide minority communities, but people over and over again said be fair, don't gerrymander. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're gerrymandering. You know, when I was listening to the prayer today, it said, let's use our wisdom for the common good and not to promote our narrow interest. I would urge you to do that. I'd urge you to vote no. Let's not make this a sad day for Kansas. Let's vote this down and start over and and produce a map that we can all feel better about.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Seeing none, Representative Croft, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the committee and body's work on this bill and the process we've gone through. Fellow legislators, Kansans, Ad Astra 2 is a good map, and I urge your support on the motion to override and pass the bill.
The question arises on the motion of Representative Croft that notwithstanding the governor's veto, the bill be passed. Again, a yes vote is to override the governor. The clerk will open the roll. You may record your vote. This is final action. Members will be at their seats. Seeing 10 hands, the call is in order. The doorman will close the doors. Members will be in their seats. The clerk will call the roll.
Representative Finney, Representative Garber. Can you flip it this way a little bit? Representative Henderson, Representative Hoffman, Representative Jacobs, Representative Lee, Representative Riley, Representative Sywert, Representative Victors.
Representative Owsley, you may be excused. Representative Fairchild, you may be excused. Representative Johnson, Stephen Johnson, you may be excused. Representative Ellis, would like to be excused. Representative Potter, you may be excused. Seeing 10 hands, the call is still in order. Has every member had the opportunity to record the vote? The clerk will close the roll. Representative Outlook, be excused. Seeing 10 hands, the call is still in order. Representative Carlin, you may be excused. Representative Samsel, you may be excused. Representative Ruiz may be excused. Representative Coleman, Representative Poskins may be excused. Representative Wolfmore, you may be excused. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Seibert votes aye. Representative Collins, you may be excused. Representative Landwehr, you may be excused. Representative Anderson, you may be excused. Representative Helgerson, you may be excused. Representative Howell, you may be excused. Representative Murphy, you may be excused. Representative Burkap, you may be excused. Representative Waymaster, you may be excused. Representative Sanders, you may be excused. Representative Riley, you may be excused. Seeing 10 hands, I call us to order. Representative Delperdane, you may be excused. Representative Kessler and Representative Williams. Representative Howerton, you may be excused. Representative Rogers, you may be excused. Representative Clifford, you may be excused. Representative Reeves, you may be excused. Representative Weigel, Representative Newland may be excused. Representative Highland, you may be excused. Representative Burrs, Representative Neighbors, you may be excused. Members desire to change their vote? Representative Jacobs votes aye. Representative Lee votes no. Seeing 10 hands, the call is in order. Representative Carpenter, Toplicker, and Lynn, you may be excused. Representative Hoheisel, you may be excused. Representative Eric Smith and Representative Wheeler may be excused. Representative Osmond may be excused. Representative Bourgeon, you may be excused. Representative Kelly, you may be excused. Representative Thomas, Representative Owens may be excused. Representative Thomas. Representative Jacobs, you may be excused. Members will be in their seats. Representative Representative Schreiber, be excused. Representative Long, be excused. Representative Resman, Representative Riley, be excused. Representative Shue, be excused. Representative Mosier, be excused. Representative Riley votes no. Representative Smith, be excused. Representative Hubert, excused. Representative Wagner, be excused. Representative Minix, be excused. Representative Orr can be excused. Representative Orr. Seeing 10 hands, the call is in order. Representative Gartner, you may be excused. Representative Nguyen, you may be excused. Representative Owsley and Representative Scottsdale. Representative Cross, you may be excused. Representative Humphreys, you may be excused. Representative Berquist, you may be excused. Representative Baker votes aye. Seeing 10 hands, the call is still in order. Representative French, you may be excused. Representative Featherston, you may be excused. Representative Landwehr, can be excused. Representative Lee, be excused. Seeing 10 hands, the call is still in order. Representative Barker, you may be excused. Representative Corbett, you may be excused. Representative Mason may be excused. Representative Thompson may be excused. Representative Soward, Representative Armberger may be excused. Seeing 10 hands, the call is to order. Representative Auerkamp, you may be excused. Representative Riley votes aye. Yes, Representative Riley votes aye. Representative Lee votes aye. Representative Hoffman votes aye. The call is raised. Does any other member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none. With 85 voted in favor. Explanation of vote. We asked for that earlier. We'll ask for it again. Representative Sawyer, explanation of vote.
Mr. Speaker, I vote no on overriding the governor's veto on Senate Bill 355. This map was rammed through the legislature at the cost of public trust, transparency, and accountability. Backroom trading brought this map before us today. I cannot support legislation, let alone a congressional map governing the next decade's socioeconomic lines that undercuts every single Kansan who elected us and the rule of law. We heard that gerrymandering and partisanship just happens. This was intentional. I refuse to support a gerrymandered map that dilutes the minority voice. I will not dignify this effort with my support, and I expect this map to be challenged in court as litigation just happens. Representatives Sawyer, Poskin, Hoy, Neighbor, Vaughn, Ohabison, Probst, Clayton, Shue, Wynn, Byers, Alcala, Gartner, Haswood, Amix, Ruiz, Burrows, Stogstall, Osman, Schmidt, Weigel, Meyer.
Representative Heiberg for explanation of vote. Representative Woodard for explanation of vote.
Mr. Speaker, District 1 still looks like an elephant. The committee could have made the map bipartisan by making one of the other districts look like a donkey, but they chose not to. I vote no. Representative Heiberger, Ousley, and Curtis.
Representative Miller for an explanation of vote.
Mr. Speaker, the Ad Astra map proposal is textbook gerrymandering, splitting the most diverse county, Wyandotte County, between congressional districts and splits up the greater Kansas City region, an obvious community of interest. My constituents overwhelmingly supported their current member of the United States House, and this map is a blatant attempt to elect someone of the opposing party. Gerrymandering in every case is wrong, regardless of party. Senate Bill 355 should more appropriately be named the per aspera proposal. I vote no. Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Who is surprised the GOP has targeted Kansas's only female member of Congress? Who is surprised the GOP has targeted the only person of color to represent Kansas in Congress in almost 100 years? This map is not about Democrats, New Yorkers, or liberals. It is about being anti-woman, anti-people of color, anti-LGBTQ, and anti-Native American. I vote to sustain the governor's veto as substitute for Senate Bill 355. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any other explanation of votes? Seeing 85 voted in favor and 37 against the passage of Senate Bill 355, the same members received the two-thirds majority. The bill is hereby declared passed. Clerk will record the vote. Body be at ease. Representative Finch for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the body, we've had a spirited debate on this issue, and now it's time to bring it to final conclusion. And so, having voted on the prevailing side, I move pursuant to House Rule 2303 that the House reconsider its previous action in overriding the governor's veto of substitute for Senate Bill 355, and that the bill be returned to that order of business consideration of vetoes.
Are there any questions? Anybody else like to speak to this motion? Representative, you may close.
I don't often come down here making motions expecting to fail, but I will be voting no on this motion. Again, as I said, this is to draw finality to the process and get the message back to the Senate so that we can move forward with redistricting in our state. So I would ask that you vote no on my motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I close.
All those in favor of the Finch motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The noes have it. Motion fails. House Bill 2480 appears on the consent calendar for the second day. Is there objection? See none, and remember the consent calendar for the third day. House Bill 2564 appears on the consent calendar for the second day. Is there objection? See none, it will remain on the consent calendar for the third day. Chair recognizes Majority Leader Hawkins for a motion to resolve it to the Committee of the Whole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of considering those items under the heading of General Orders.
You've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion carries. The chair appoints Representative Eric Smith, the chair of the Committee of the Whole.
All right, body. Continuation. First item of business is HCR 5023, and for the purpose of carrying HCR 5023, the chair recognizes Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were no committee amendments. HCR 5023 simply states that the state of Kansas denounces instances of price gouging and market manipulation involving natural gas and supports state efforts by the Office of the Attorney General and federal efforts by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to investigate increases in natural gas prices during the extreme cold weather event of February 2021 and encourages efforts to protect Kansas ratepayers. There were 4 proponents to this resolution and no opponents. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Representative. Does anyone wish to speak to the bill? Chair recognizes Representative Collins to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to speak in favor of this resolution. It hit many of our smaller communities particularly hard. As a matter of fact, 2 municipalities in my district Uniontown and Mulberry have municipal gas systems, and with the price hike, it was really a big uncertainty for them and for other wholesale gas customers in the state, and it does appear to be price gouging. And like I said, I just speak in favor of this bill to encourage the Attorney General to continue. He has started action against the suppliers, and we just should encourage the Attorney General's office to continue with that. And thank you again, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to thank the body for considering this.
Thank you, Representative. Is there further discussion? The chair recognizes Representative Keither.
I'm glad the chair can recognize me because we have a 1:30 meeting together every day, so you ought to know what I look like. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of HCR 5023. It certainly is delivering a message that we don't stand for price gouging in the state of Kansas, and if we find out if anything has occurred after investigations have occurred, we will be steadfast and ready to go move ahead with anything we need to do to correct that for our ratepayers. So please be an affirmative vote for House CR 5023, and thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Anderson, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also like to point out if the lawsuits acquire any money, that will go to the ratepayers first. And with that, I move that when the committee rises and reports, it report HCR 5023 favorably for passage.
You've heard the motion by Representative Anderson to report HCR 5023 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. Next item of business, HB 2473. For the purpose of carrying HB 2473, the chair recognizes Representative Heiberger.
Mr. Chairman, there were no committee amendments. Colleagues, I would urge you to pay close attention to the discussion on this bill. This is one of the most important bills on general orders today. In fact, it's probably the fourth most important. I'd also like to thank the chair for his faith in trusting me into allowing me to carry a bill of such complexity. What this bill does is it removes the requirement that all 6 district judges in Douglas County be required to sit on the board of the Douglas County Law Library. They meet once a month. They don't feel like it's a good use of their judicial resources. 2 other counties are already exempted from the provisions of 3127, those counties being Sedgwick and Johnson. It's a pretty simple bill. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative. Does any member desire to speak to the bill? Chair recognizes Representative Patton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carrie did a great job of explaining this bill. I would encourage your support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there further discussion? Chair recognizes Representative Neely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My friend here did an excellent job of discussing this very intricate bill, and I urge your support on it.
Is there further discussion? If there's no further discussion, Representative Heiberger, you may close.
This item was sponsored by myself and the representative from 42nd District. I would encourage you to support this striking example of bipartisan cooperation. Mr. Chairman, I move that when the committee rises and reports, that it report HB 2473 favorably for passage.
Body, you've heard the motion by Representative Heiberger to report HB 2473 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The next item of business is HB 2490. For the purpose of carrying HB 2490, the chair recognizes Representative Kincannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 2490 comes from the Committee on Children and Seniors. It was requested by the Kansas State Treasurer regarding ABLE accounts. So in 2014, U.S. Congress enacted the Stephen J. Beck Jr. Achieving a Better Life Experience Act. So that's where ABLE comes from. Kansas followed in 2015 by passing legislation by a large margin allowing the disabled to save for disability-related expenses. So about these accounts, there's about 1,100 of them. Average balance is approximately $9,300. These accounts can go up to $100,000. Anyone can contribute up to $16,000 per year per person. And then you're eligible to receive tax benefits with those contributions. The accounts must be used for expenses related to the account owner's disability and for the benefit of the account owner. So some of these qualifying expenses might be education, employment, training, housing, transportation, assistive technology, those kind of things. The ABLE savings account is administered through the State Treasurer's Office, and it provides dedicated account security and fraud monitoring. All account activity is monitored for suspicious activity, which might indicate fraud or abuse. New accounts and all disbursements are reported to the IRS. So back in November of 2020, the Trump administration issued final regulations for the state ABLE programs. Kansas must, thank you, Mr. Chair. Kansas must update our statute by November 22nd of 2022, or we will no longer be a qualified ABLE program, and the benefactors will risk losing their federal benefits. So what this bill does is aligns with the federal program. It makes enrollment changes. So currently, the accounts can only be opened by the account owner, or if the owner lacks capacity, a conservator or guardian. So the federal government expanded that group, and so it can include family members or anyone approved by the state treasurer. Also, eligibility. Currently, the federal government has that you qualify, that the qualifying disability must have an onset prior to the age of 26. So there's some bipartisan legislation in Congress that's led by our own Senator Jerry Moran that would raise the age of onset to 46. This benefits people who have a disability later in life and specifically helps veterans. So in anticipation of changes in this bill, we are deleting the age of 26 and instead referring to the eligibility rules that are referenced to the federal law. And with that, Mr. Chair, I will stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? Chair recognizes Representative Ousley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the carrier of the bill covered most everything. I don't have too much to add other than I urge your support for 2490. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there further discussion? Chair recognizes Representative Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in strong support of this bill. My husband, when he was state treasurer, helped to create the ABLE Act here in Kansas, and he worked very hard on that. And in that role, I've gotten to interact with a lot of families who have disabled family members, and this program is an important tool for them to be able to help with the long-term security and planning. If you imagine that you're an adult, you're a parent, and you have a child with disabilities, and you can't fund, you have to be careful about how much assets that child has, but you're worried about what happens to your child when you're gone away and you've passed on. This program really fills in that gap. It's really important, and I've been really blessed to be able to meet a lot of the families who use the ABLE Act and hear directly from them what a great impact it has for them, so I strongly support this resolution.
Is there further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, Representative Kincannon, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that when the committee rises and reports, we report House Bill 2490 favorable for passage.
Body, you've heard the motion by Representative Kincannon to report HB 2490 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. They do have it. The motion passes. This concludes our general orders. The chair recognizes the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we rise and report.
You've heard the motion to rise and report. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes.
The clerk will read the committee report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole recommends House Concurrent Resolution 5023 be adopted, House Bills 2473 and 2490 be passed.
Speaker recognizes Representative Eric Smith for a motion to adopt the committee report.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I move that we adopt the committee report.
You've heard the motion to adopt. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. Chair recognizes Representative Hawkins for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to House Rule 2311, I move that an emergency be declared and that HCR 5023, House Bill 2473, and House Bill 2490 be advanced to that order of business. Final action on bills and concurrent resolutions.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The motion is unanimously adopted. This will be emergency final action. Final action on bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Concurrent Resolution number 5023 by the Committee on Energy, Utility, and Telecommunications, a concurrent resolution denouncing price gouging and market manipulation in the natural gas marketplace and supporting investigations into extraordinary price increases of wholesale natural gas during the extreme cold weather event of February 2021.
This constitutes final action on HCR 5023. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Helmer votes aye. Any further changes of vote? Seeing none, 114 having voted in favor and 2 against the passage of HCR 5023, the same having received a constitutional majority, the resolution is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Final action, the clerk will read.
House Bill number 2473 by Representatives Heiberger and Neely, an act concerning law libraries relating to the Board of Trustees, removing the requirement that all district court judges serve on the Board of Trustees of the Douglas County Law Library.
This constitutes final action on HB 2473. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? Clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? If not, 121 having voted in favor and 0 against the passage of House Bill 2473, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Final action, the clerk will read.
House Bill number 2490 by the Committee on Children and Seniors, an act concerning persons with disabilities relating to income taxation, able safe accounts, authorizing the state treasurer to determine account owners and designated beneficiaries, adopting the federal definition for an eligible individual, adding persons who may open an account, requiring additional compliance with the Federal Internal Revenue Code.
This constitutes final action on House Bill 2490. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Seeing none, 118 having voted in favor and 3 against the passage of House Bill 2490, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Reports of standing committees, the clerk will read.
Committee on Veterans and Military recommends House Bill 2529 be passed. Committee on Veterans and Military recommends House Bill 2540 be passed. Committee on Financial Institutions and Rural Development recommends Senate Bill 337 be passed.
Is there any objection to returning to that order of business, introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions? Seeing no objection, the clerk will read.
House Bill number 2670 by Representatives Lee and Garber, an act concerning public health relating to responses to infectious or contagious disease by certain public and private entities, prohibiting certain acts by business entities, governmental entities, or public officials based upon a person's vaccination status or possession of an immunity passport relating to access to services, goods, facilities, and opportunities, proceedings under the revised Kansas Code for Care of Children, proceedings relating to legal custody, residency, parenting, time of a child under the Kansas Family Law Code. House Bill number 2671 by Representatives Stogsdill, Alcala, and others, an act concerning school districts relating to teacher employment contracts requiring due process procedures when non-renewing or terminating certain contracts. House Bill number 2672 by Representative Riley, an act concerning labor relating to licensing of professional occupations, creating the Open Borders for Kansas Jobs Act, providing for issuance of Kansas licenses or certifications to practice certain professions to persons holding credentials from other states that have substantially equivalent requirements for such licenses or certifications as Kansas. House Bill number 2673 by the Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure relating to sentencing for drug crimes, expanding the number of presumptive probation and border gridlocks, modifying the sentence terms for certain drug offenders. House Bill number 2674 by the Committee on Judiciary, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure relating to conditions of release prior to trial, requiring a forfeiture of an appearance bond to be set aside in certain circumstances. House Bill number 2675 by the Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning health and health care, relating to health insurance coverage, expanding medical assistance eligibility, requiring the Department of Health and Environment to direct certain individuals to a work referral program, and to study certain Medicaid expansion topics. House Bill number 2676 by the Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning counties, allowing counties to create a code inspection enforcement fund and expanding the existing equipment fund to include electronic technology. House Bill number 2677 by the Committee on Federal and State Affairs, an act concerning the Personal and Family Protection Act, prohibiting the collection of personal information regarding off-duty law enforcement officers entering buildings or requiring the officer to wear anything identifying the person as a law enforcement officer or being armed. House Bill number 2678 by Representatives Lee and Garber, an act concerning public health relating to responses to infectious or contagious disease by certain public or private entities, ensuring a right to in-person visitation at medical care facilities and adult care homes, prohibiting certain public health orders related to isolation and quarantine, stay-at-home orders, curfews, and face masks, providing criminal penalties for an individual who disregards an isolation or quarantine recommendation when great bodily harm to another person or death to another person results from such act. House Bill number 2679 by Representatives Lee and Garber, an act concerning commerce, prohibiting certain restrictions on the operation of private businesses by governmental entities and public officials, limiting related state of disaster emergency powers of the governor and state of local disaster emergency powers of counties and cities. House Bill number 2680 by Representatives Poskin, Clayton, and Tarwater, an act concerning economic development relating to income and privilege tax incentives for employee savings account, establishing the Kansas Employee Emergency Savings Account program, providing an income and privilege tax credit for certain eligible employer deposits to employee savings account established under the program. House Concurrent Resolution number 5028 by Representatives Garber, Hubert, and others, a proposition to amend Section 1 of the Bill of Rights of the Constitution of the State of Kansas relating to equal rights.
Are there announcements? Representative Prahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Transportation will start. We delayed 10 minutes, so we'll start at 20 till 2. So see you there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Epley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, again, this is like third time's a charm. We are going to have the virtual IKC event tonight. The link has been sent out this morning. It was by Heather Braum. There's a link on there for your virtual connection. You can also get some hors d'oeuvres before that if you wish. There's a link for that also from Connie Satzler. Love to have everybody tune in. It's going to be for an hour from 5 to 6 p.m. this evening. It's virtual. You can sit in your office and relax and just listen. There's new data out about vaccines and how families receive vaccines in the state of Kansas. It's pretty exciting. I think you'd like to hear about this. And also, we're going to hear from a member of the ACIP on how vaccines are approved in the state and also nationally. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. House Higher Ed Budget Committee will be meeting in 10 minutes. We'll be getting our report from the Kansas Board of Regents.
Representative Hubert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Education will be meeting in about 10 minutes. Shouldn't be a long meeting. Thank you.
Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Corrections, you only thought you were going to get out of CNB 2 days in a row. We'll meet here in about 10 minutes. Thank you.
Representative Tarwater.
Attention Commerce fans. I hope you got the email, but we are not meeting today. I made an announcement yesterday that we were. I meant tomorrow, and tomorrow we are hearing HB 2526. Thank you.
Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a reminder, Johnson County delegation members, remember to mark your calendar Monday, the standing Johnson County delegation lunch. Check your email for location. Thank you.
Representative Williams.
All right, colleagues, tomorrow's Performa, so you may not have been planning to come to the chambers, but my friend and colleague from Douglas County and I will be recognizing kids from JAG-K. You will see jobs for American graduate kids, like 300 in our building tomorrow. And so we'll be providing just a way to honor them. So please come tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Representative Kincannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Children and Seniors will start in about 10 minutes, 1:40.
Representative Landwehr.
No. Thank you. Health and Human Services will be meeting in 5 minutes.
Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Agriculture Committee members, our hearing schedule for today has been moved to Monday, and so no meeting today for the Committee on Agriculture. Thank you.
Representative Corbett.
Ag budget will meet as soon as we can stop talking. I'll see you down there.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, Speaker recognizes Majority Leader Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Body, you have on your desk the legislative prayer breakfast tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. in 142 South. If you read this, I think this ought to catch your attention. The guest speaker will be the Reverend Brett Durbin, Executive Director for Trash Mountain Project, a multifaceted ministry to individuals and families living in trash dumps around the world. That should catch your attention. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House adjourn until Thursday, February 10th at 11 a.m. pro forma.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The House is adjourned.